My name is Maya Yates, and I'm 23 years old. I work from home and have a kind older brother who is 5 years my senior and currently engaged. His fiancée, Natalie, is 26 years old and has a personality that's the complete opposite of mine. While I struggle with social interactions, Natalie is lively and easily makes friends. Natalie has become quite close with our parents and frequently visits our home on her own. Today was no different. She arrived without any prior notice. When the doorbell rang, my mom instantly recognized it was Natalie and greeted her warmly. Natalie entered the living room with a cheerful "I'm back," but her expression changed to one of surprise when she saw me. "Ma, you're still at home?" she asked, skipping the greeting. I replied, "I'm working from home." Natalie immediately retorted, "Enough with that. You need to get a real job." Unable to argue, I quietly retreated to my workspace. My room is a soundproof space that I designed to pay for myself. It's my sanctuary, a place I keep locked and private. To enter, one must unlock the soundproof door and open another door inside. Once inside, I vented my frustrations aloud, feeling somewhat relieved after shouting about my irritation with Natalie's comments. At lunchtime, a small light bulb in my room began to blink, signaling that it was time for a break. I headed to the living room, where lunch was set up at the dining table. My mom invited me to sit down, and I took my usual spot, only to find Natalie across from me with a displeased look. "You get hungry even though you don't work? Don't you ever think about contributing to the household? You're just like a parasite," Natalie said harshly. I kept my head down, listening in silence as my parents joined the table and said grace. Natalie was visibly unhappy with my parents for not reprimanding me. "Your father and mother are too lenient with you, Mia. I can't feel secure about marrying into this family if things continue like this," she continued angrily. As Natalie ate lunch, her dissatisfaction grew. She expressed her concerns about what would happen if my parents could no longer care for me, suggesting that it would be unfair for her or her future children to take on that responsibility. Her assumption that I would remain a dependent shut-in upset me, and I stopped eating, mentally protesting her claims. Noticing my distress, my mother reassured Natalie, "Maya does work, you know. Don't worry," but Natalie remained unconvinced. "At 23, with your appearance, braided hair, thick glasses, and always in sweatpants, who would believe you're working?" she challenged. Frustrated, I responded softly, "Appearance has nothing to do with work." This seemed to enrage Natalie even more. "Well then, what kind of job do you do? Tell me," she demanded. Glaring at me, Natalie's intense stare left me too frightened to speak. It was my mother who intervened. "Only our family knows about Maya's job," she said. "I'm sorry, but we can't discuss it right now." Natalie, visibly frustrated, stood up and stormed out, exclaiming, "So, I'm not part of this family, is that it?" I apologized to my parents for the scene, and my father reassured me with a smile. "Don't worry about it, Mia. Just focus on doing what you love." Feeling a bit lighter, I decided to continue with dinner. During the meal, I suggested that after my brother's wedding, I would make sure Natalie learns about my job. My parents seemed to agree, and their expressions relaxed, acknowledging that it might be a good idea. After lunch, I resumed working. In the evening, as usual, I went grocery shopping with my mom while my father tended to the vegetables in our garden, watering and preparing for harvest. When we returned from the supermarket, we found Natalie in tears in the living room, with my father sitting beside her. Worried, my mom asked, "What's the matter? Why are you crying so much?" Natalie clung to my mother and sobbed uncontrollably, unable to speak. Noticing the concerned look on my father's face, I asked him what had happened. "I heard a loud noise from inside the house while I was in the garden," he said, so I rushed toward the sound. He gestured to a crowbar and hammer lying on the table. Realizing what had happened, I rushed to my room. When I reached the door, I found it severely damaged, as if someone had tried to force it open with the tools. I was paralyzed with shock and fear. My father contacted my brother, who lived in the company dormitory, and informed him of the situation. My brother promised to come over as soon as he finished work. I decided to stay in my room until he arrived, hoping to calm down. Once I was settled, I called my company and received permission to inform Natalie, who would soon become part of our family, about the nature of my job after her marriage to my brother. Seeing the room light flicker, I assumed my brother had arrived. When I left my room, I was surprised to find him already at the door. I gasped, and he apologized. "Sorry to startle you," he said, not looking at me but at the damaged door. He must have been shocked by what Natalie had done. When I told him not to worry about it and that I would replace the door myself, he responded firmly, "No, that won't do. Natalie will compensate for this." Taking my hand, my brother led me to the living room where Natalie and our parents were. As soon as we entered, he addressed Natalie with a stern tone. "I had no idea you were capable of such violence." Everyone turned to look at my brother, who was rarely seen angry. He continued, "Apologize to Maya properly and compensate for the door." Natalie, visibly distressed, began to apologize tearfully. "I'm sorry, I'm so sorry," she said, but my brother cut her off. "The apology isn't for me," he snapped, glaring at her fiercely. I told my brother it was okay now, but he kept his eyes fixed on Natalie. Natalie then turned to me, knelt down, and apologized. "I won't do something like this again. I will compensate for the damage." I accepted her apology and decided to move past the incident. However, I was curious about why this had happened, so I asked Natalie. She replied, "I thought if I made a scene, it would force you to work." I considered whether I should reveal the nature of my job to her before the wedding, but since it would go against company policy, I chose to keep it to myself for now. To ease the tense atmosphere between my brother and Natalie, I brought out 2 live concert tickets from my room and handed one to each of them. Upon seeing the tickets, Natalie's eyes widened with excitement. "These are for Aim's concert," she exclaimed, turning bright red with joy. She looked at my brother and said, "Let's go." Her face was radiant with happiness. My brother asked, "Are you sure? These are hard to get." I replied, "I happen to get them. You can use them as a peace offering if you'd like." Seeing their delighted reactions made me feel joyful as well. The good vibes returned, and everyone was able to forget about the damaged door and enjoy the rest of the meal. On the day of the concert, while I was out, Natalie visited my house excitedly to express her gratitude. Since I wasn't home, she told my parents, "Enjoy. Maya has decided to work outside, and the concert was fantastic. I'm so happy she made that decision." After the concert, my brother called me. He had separated from Natalie earlier due to a company drinking party. He was thrilled and said, "The concert was amazing. Natalie is actually a huge fan of AIM and had always wanted to get tickets to the annual concert. She was overjoyed to see AIM and fulfill her longtime wish." On the way home, Natalie had said that AIM was adorable, beautiful, and that her songs and lyrics were incredible. I told my brother I was glad we made up. He replied, "The soundproof door we paid for as compensation cost $7,000. I responded, "That sounds about right." He was taken aback. "That's expensive." I explained that since it was a soundproof room, I had invested a lot of effort and money into the components, which surprised him even more. Natalie mentioned that while the $7,000 expense was painful, the concert made up for it. As for me, the door would be fixed, and seeing my brother and his friends getting along made me feel really good about giving them the tickets. Despite Natalie's continued misunderstanding about my work-from-home job, she believed I had started working outside after the concert and was pleased by what she thought was progress. As soon as she realized her mistake, she began calling and visiting my house daily, insisting that I get a job. I had hoped to endure her demands until the wedding, but things only escalated. Even though I wanted to avoid seeing her until then, Natalie frequently pressed the call light switch to summon me. Whenever I left my room and went to the living room, she would nag me about getting a job before the wedding and her aversion to having a jobless person in the family. To distract her, I started giving her various merchandise like mascots and file cases from my previous company. Initially, she was thrilled with the AIM goods, but eventually, she started questioning why I had so much AIM merchandise. Reluctantly, I explained that a friend who works with AIM's company gives them to me. Hearing this, Natalie's mood improved even more as she requested, "Please get me more tickets next time." However, she began to demand more merchandise and even made a fuss about wanting to enter my room. I was concerned she might damage the door again, so I decided to give her a stern warning. "Natalie," I said firmly, "if you break the door again, it won't just be the door fee this time. Last time, I paid for the repairs, but next time, you'll be the one footing the bill." Her face went pale, and I wondered if she was truly planning to damage the door again. I could only hope the wedding would be over soon so I could be free from this situation. Until the wedding day, Natalie's visits and the flashing call light were constant. I lost count of how many times I shouted "Enough already" from my room. I tried discussing it with my brother, but he seemed resigned, saying, "I've told Natalie 100 times that Maya works, but she just doesn't listen." In my mind, I wanted to tell my brother to get as angry as he had been when the door was broken, but I knew that was not an option. He was busy finishing up work before the wedding so he could go on the honeymoon, and I had no choice but to give up. Finally, it was the day before the wedding. Our parents planned to spend the day together, and we enjoyed a fun evening reminiscing and looking through old family albums. It was nice to have all four of us together after a long time. When I mentioned that after I get married, my brother would have his own family, leaving just the three of us with our parents, I noted that it felt a bit lonely. My brother replied reassuringly, "No, no, I'll come by, spend the day with you." I was glad to hear that. In the calm of the evening, my brother's cell phone rang. It was Natalie, who asked to speak with me. He handed me the phone, saying, "Natalie wants to talk to you." When I answered, Natalie said, "Hey, something's up with AIM. There's a big announcement tomorrow. Ask your friend who gives you the merchandise what it's about. What if she's quitting or going on hiatus?" Apparently, AIM's agency had announced a major announcement on social media for the following day. Not wanting to be disturbed during my relaxing family time, I said I didn't know and hung up the phone. My brother seemed to share my sentiment and turned off his cell phone. As our father reminded us that we had to get up early the next day, my brother bowed deeply and said, "Father, Mother, thank you for taking care of me for so long. From now on, I will be happy with Natalie." My mom quickly responded, "That's what women do when they get married." When my brother questioned her, our family ended the night before the wedding with a hearty laugh. Finally, the wedding day arrived. I informed my family that I would be a little late in the morning while my parents and brother went ahead to the venue. When I arrived at the venue a little later, I went to the waiting room to congratulate Natalie. I knocked on the door, and there she was, the beautiful bride, sitting alone and fully prepared. As I was about to offer my congratulations, Natalie's demeanor shifted dramatically. She turned to me with a scowl and said, "Hey, there's something I still need to address from yesterday when you hung up the phone." I apologized and asked what she wanted. She said curtly, "You can go home now." I replied, "But it's my brother's wedding." She responded, "I've been telling you this for a long time. Why didn't you get a job? I don't want people thinking you're part of the family." Before I could protest, Natalie stepped closer, almost nose to nose with me, and said, "If I say go home, then go home." She then slammed the door shut with force. Feeling dejected, I retreated to a separate room that had been reserved for me. There, I had my makeup and hair done by professionals and changed into the cocktail dress I had bought for the wedding, preparing for my brother's wedding that I wouldn't be attending. In the midst of this, I received a call from my parents. I explained the situation, assuring them that even though I wouldn't be at the ceremony, I still intended to celebrate in my own way. As the wedding ceremony began, I decided to watch the event on the venue's monitor to feel somewhat connected. There was a moment when my brother looked for me, and I nearly broke down in tears. But I reminded myself that it was a day for celebration, not tears, and continued to watch and send my blessings. After the ceremony, the female MC announced, "We have a special celebration video for the stars of today's show. Please look at the monitor." The room darkened, and a video began playing. The screen lit up with an image of AIM, whom Natalie adored, and AIM shared a congratulatory message. "Yes, in truth, I am AIM. Congratulations on your marriage, brother and Natalie." Natalie's eyes widened in shock as she turned to my brother, who seemed to be saying, "That's Maya." The video continued with me giving a simple excuse for my absence, stating that I had urgent matters to attend to. I added, "I'm sorry I never told you I'm part of your new family. However, I've decided to work overseas and probably won't see each other in the future, so feel free to pretend we're not family." Oh, and I wasn't a shut-in. I was working in my home studio. Despite a hint of sarcasm, I concluded my message with, "I wish you happiness." As the lights came back on, all eyes were on Natalie. She looked as pale as a ghost and was utterly dumbfounded. Once my part was done, I left the venue with the hair and makeup artists and other staff. Later, my brother called me. It turns out that after we left, Natalie was supposed to thank the guests and see them off, but instead spent her time frantically searching for me. When she found out I had already left, she broke down crying in front of the folding screen. I also heard from friends that she's now known as the bride who wasn't considered family by AIM, and my speech from the wedding has gone viral on social media. She regrets her actions and now finds it difficult to even go out in her neighborhood.